Welcome to the Wot Supp Podcast. We are here today with Pat from Spartan Suppz. He is not really one of the most public characters in the industry, but he's very influential and, as far as I'm concerned, a fairly powerful figure in the industry. So it's awesome to have you on, Pat. And we've also, of course, got Will.
Appreciate it.
I think we got a bit of a delay there with you just on that one, Pat. But yeah, no, awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat to us. I know you're a busy man. You've got a lot going on with your, you're doing renos on your gyms and on your stores. And of course, as usual, we have Will from Primabolics with us. What's been happening with you this week, Will? It hasn't been that long since I talked to you, but I'm sure you've got some updates.
Yeah. I've been trying to streamline it. I've got a funny little project actually, and I'm trying to figure out a more efficient way with the warehousing side of things. How to make sure that we, with stock continuity, we always see we have issues keeping continuous stock rotating through, and particularly now where supply chains a bit harder to get certain things with everything going on. So mainly doing stuff on the back end, because I think we're probably only getting probably a month tops to maybe 2 at maximum away from seeing a pretty healthy spike after this day. Like I'm starting to already see the hope in retailers. A slight pickup in sales. I don't think we're far away from having a really big boom after this. I want to make sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd 100% agree with that. I've been talking to a lot of people in the industry lately. Like I mentioned in our last podcast, and there's people tipping that we're going to see a boom after this kind of lull period in foot traffic that we've seen. As the gyms start to reopen, people are going to start to be like, all right, time to get my pre-workout, time to get my fat burner, time to get my protein. And, we might even see such a boom that it could be slightly difficult to get some of these items in certain stores. I don't want to tip that we're going to see a repeat of the toilet paper situation, but it'd be certainly nice for the retail owners who have been struggling if that did happen. What are your thoughts on that one, Pat?
Yeah, tip Pat.
Yeah, I think that as much as it's been a little bit of a shortfall for a little while, a little bit of a change up, but I think you'll definitely see an increased awareness when it comes to people's health and fitness and so on. So yeah, it should be a nice change for the better. And I think for sure everyone has gained a better appreciation for the ability to train and to take care of their bodies and just be conscious of their health in general.
Yeah, that's it. For those of you guys who don't know much about Pat, who he is, what he does, he comes from pretty humble beginnings in this industry, and I guess as far as some people in the industry are concerned, he hasn't been around in it all that long, but he's managed to achieve a hell of a lot. I think I believe you started off with just purchasing a small kind of rundown gym, Pat. Give us a little bit of an insight into your story, where you started, and kind of where you've come, and the sort of time frame.
Sure. So straight out of university, I did a double degree, business management, exercise science. Like lifting weights, had the genetics that probably didn't match. So I was more good at the numbers and the science sort of side of things. So that's sort of what played to my strengths. And I actually bought the gym that I trained at about 6 months or so out of uni, probably 5-6 months out. The place was hemorrhaging money. It was very run down, had a very terrible membership base. The place was just extremely neglected. It needed a lot of love, a lot of attention, an absolute ton of money, really just someone to care about it. I think was the most important thing. Gyms is a real passion business, particularly for a more of a bodybuilding style gym. It takes a lot of effort, so it just needed a hell of a lot of that. There was no systems, no structure, no anything, and no one who gave a shit about it, most importantly. So I think the place before I took over, I lost about 80 grand the year before. I had about $0 to my name at that stage. So it required every cent that I ever had. I had to get my dad to guarantee the loan with an additional loan. I was leveraged pretty hard. I got a lot of rejection starting out, and now the gym is the gym's stable. The gym is good. The gym is closed at the moment, obviously with the COVID restrictions, but gym's the baby. I could never imagine life without it. It's sort of like the home and underpinning of Spartans. So it's been a real passion project. We're doing some renovations at the moment. We've painted the whole building. We've done everything we've done ourselves as well, which is something that I'm Very proud of. It's been quite a process. A lot of hurdles along the way, but it's fun as well. It's very rewarding, very gratifying being able to see your own creation, doing it with your team as well.
So how does someone go from buying a small, somewhat unsuccessful gym to
very unsuccessful, very terrible.
One of the biggest distribution companies in Australia, one of the biggest online stores in Australia, and now a series of physical stores as well. How do you make the leap from a gym to supplements to where you are now?
Sure. So my journey started out selling supplements in the boot of my car at uni, buying from bodybuilding.com, got to doing, I remember I got up to $300, I got $20 off. I was so excited. I thought I'd made the big time. The boot of the car was overflowing, but just transitioned just bit by bit. Like, there's no real like leaps. There's nothing really that, that seems like a big deal at the time, but you do sort of remember looking back and join the dots looking back. So started into the sort of distribution side of things with Blackstone Labs. I followed the founders, Aaron Singman, who I'm sure everyone would know from Redcon 1 at the moment, and PJ as well, who's current director of Blackstone, and followed them from bodybuilding times and so on. So liked the products, they weren't available, wanted to connect the dots, started buying little bits and pieces here and there, 24s, things like that for the store at the gym, and then grew and grew. And we were doing more and more of it. We weren't selling it or wholesaling or anything like that at that stage, but did have to make a bit of a shift. There was a critical time because the formula was changing. The new one had some prohibited ingredients in Australia. So we had to do a custom formulation, do our own tweak on it. And the minimum run was 1,000 units per flavor of that. And we did that, 3 flavors of Dust V2, which were red ice, blue sky, and watermelon. And then a powdered fat burner as well, which they'd never done before. So we custom formulated that for Australia. So our opening order was 4,000 units, which was insurmountable at the time. It was an absolutely enormous amount of money. It was about $80K US.
I think Pat's just dropped out for a second there. We've had a little bit. Yeah, there you go. He's back. I think it's interesting, I think that we all have that point in our career, I guess, where things go from sort of the small time to you see something like that first $80,000 order, and at that time it's like I'm in way over my head here, and I think there's only a small number of people that have got the kahunas, if you will, to lay them out there on the chopping block and say, all right, I'm going to give this a crack. But it paid off for you.
It was definitely a big leap. I remember when that was prepay for everything, manufacturing 6 weeks or so, air freight another couple of weeks on top of that, plus the air freight bill, plus all the GST on the way in. There was a lot, an $80K US by the time you fraction that out. It wasn't, the dollar was a little bit better than it is now, but we're looking well over 100 grand into that. And I remember this truck load pulling up and with us hand unloading all these pallets into the cardio theater of the gym for lack of another space, and seeing all these hundreds and hundreds of cases all laid out, and we're so excited, and just had this moment. I turned around to Maddie and said, fuck, how are we going to sell all this stuff? And there was just there's no thought of that prior to that. There was no just this mad anxiety of going, I hope this actually happens. And then it got here and we're like, right, okay, now what?
We all have that.
And yeah, no contacts, no reputation, no idea what we were doing. Very much early days of social media too. So it was not as easy as it is now by comparison. It was a process. No systems, no idea, no wholesale, no way of actually doing things, just all manual.
Being that you're one of the, you would say quite successful entrepreneurs in the Australian fitness industry, do you think that it takes sometimes that kind of, I guess, gambling sort of yeehaw attitude to get things going? Do you think you need to be someone who is willing to kind of guess, figuratively speaking, balance that tightrope without the safety net there?
If we didn't have that financial pressure and a little bit of, I'd call it a bit of ignorance. Someone would call it, like confidence. I'd probably go ignorance. In terms of, if we had the level of awareness and I knew what I knew now, there's no way I would ever take a risk that gigantic. I mean, if one thing went wrong with that, everything was over. That was the end of existence in this industry completely. Was that big of a risk. But it's that sort of like that pressure which really pushes you to sort of like, to rise. And then flying without a net, I mean, that's when you really soar to the greatest heights. So it pushes you to become the best versions of yourself for lack of there's no plan B. So if you have a plan B, your plan A is obviously not very good. And more importantly, you're spending time thinking of a way out as opposed to, your journey to success or to survival really there's no thought of success. There's thought of survival. Like, we just spent all this money. We need to get back to zero.
It's a good way, isn't it? You force yourself into success because you frame it differently. You really, you put yourself in a position where you've got no other. You're right. It's not about making sales for profit anymore. It's like, I've got $100,000 loan. We did the same thing. We literally went. We borrowed steel. We borrowed off grandparents, off friends, off family members, trying to get us off the ground, and did the same thing. You did this enormous upfront PO, expecting a monster amount of business, and we air freighted it too, and we did customs and GST, and air freight alone was like $26,000. I remember as like a 21-year-old going, 25-year-old going, oh yeah, that'll be cool. And you just go, oh well, now I've got a small mortgage. What next? And you just do it, because if you don't, you go under.
Well, that's the thing with both of you guys. You both had experience in contract manufacture in the US, and I think that with Pat especially, something that really interests me about you, Pat, is that there's a definite way that the Australian supplement industry and the Australian suppliers are starting to go, which is tending towards Australian brands, Australian contract manufacturer, and that sort of thing. But you've kind of gone the other way, and you've gone, you know what? I'm going to back some big US brands, and I'm going to continue importing, which is really, I guess, against the grain of what's happening everywhere else in the industry. And you seem to be someone who has never been scared to just go about things your own way.
Yeah, I'd say like at the time, but now obviously that's a uphill battle in terms of the Australian currency at the moment is not very advantageous. Importing in general is extremely cost prohibitive due to the freight cost just completely soaring. And 5 years ago to now, the quality is better, the variety is better, what you can do in terms of actual products available and so on, and the amount of people available to do it is 100 to 1 on what it was 5 years ago. So things have come a long ways, and the gap between the US and the Australian manufacturing standards, quality, service available it's really closed up quite a bit. So there used to be big restrictions in terms of if you wanted to make a pre-workout in Australia, there really wasn't a lot available, and then there was so much available in the US, and costs were so different that things it wasn't even a thought to manufacture in Australia at the time. But now it's a really good option, and I'm happy to see more happening in Australia and supporting Australian made and owned. It's fantastic.
Now, at the risk of shamelessly self-promoting, what do you think of this little puppy? I've just continued to. This is my newest project, Neurocram. It's a Nootropic, so I figured that's right up your alley there, Pat.
I'm a big Nootropic fan. I'm drinking my favorite Skywalk at the moment. Beautiful. So I'm big fan of nootropics and less super stimulant products and so on, more than sort of enhancing what you have, not so much a ridiculous amount of stimulus.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm in the same boat with you there. I came from being, I achieved the nickname the Prince of Stims when I was in my early 20s in the local area, because I was just searching for whatever could rock me the hardest. But, in being in the industry for a long, long time, I've slowly but surely moved away from stimulants, regardless of whether it's my pre-workout or whether it's my nootropic or whether it's my whatever it is, I tend to try and avoid stims where I can, because I just find that there's so many other things that a supplement can do for you that a stimulant can undo. And so for me anyway, I find, and I don't know if you find the same thing, the experienced guys or the guys who have been doing this stuff for a long time tend not to really be using stims as much as what I used to see anyway.
Agree. That's definitely a big industry trend in general, is that the super high stimulant type products, standards used to be like caffeine in a pre-workout, for example, started at 300. And then it was like, okay, and then what else on top of that? It was, there was always like, and you added up the total amount of, and some of these very potent, powerful stimulants, but I said everything that you get out of that product, everything it takes from you, it will take from the day. I mean, it does down. So sometimes less is more when it comes to stimulants, particularly things like caffeine. I mean, there really is a finite amount of that you can tolerate and gain benefit from.
Well, for me,
now that's much less.
I believe that golden number is 320 milligrams. That's what I believe the golden number is. What are your thoughts on that, Will? Where's your golden number on caffeine?
Oh, mate, I'm way lower. I love about 150. Like I sit about there. That's my happy place. 150. If I want a hard workout, 200 is the ceiling. I don't know. I look like you guys. I've just burnt myself out. You get to a point where and like you said, good points, Stu. Like you get to a stage where you're actually undoing a lot of the good work of the nootropic complex. Is like you're looking. I want to work out pre-workout for the focus, for the mental, for the cognitive benefits. I want to be really in the room, in the zone. And then as soon as you throw in something that's going to promote anxiety, going to promote stress, going to just heighten your senses. I don't know. There's very much a cost benefit. There's a cost benefit there. So, and I think that for me lays about 200, but I usually sit at like 150. I'm a bit of a bitch with stims, but it's just 10 years of them, I'm sort of over it. So I've got to keep making it though, because people want stims. So I've got to keep making products with them. But
something that really interests me, and something that while I've got you two guys here, because you're both really you're really into your substances and understanding the interactions between compounds. To me, it's the biggest catch-22 in the whole supplement game is the customer who wants the pre-workout that's going to give them the massive stim, but they also want a huge pump. Now, to me, it's always been kind of a conflicting dream. To me, it's like you can either achieve huge stimulation through CNS stimulants, or you can achieve huge vasodilation because stimulants are vasoconstrictors by their nature. So where do you guys sit on that? I know some people claim, well, my pre-workout gives you the ultimate stim and the ultimate pump. Is such a thing possible?
You go, Pat.
So, all right. So it's definitely a personal preference here as to what someone wants to get out of their product and how much of sort of one or the other that they're looking for. Are you going to get like a 10 out of 10 experience for both? No, they do. So I wouldn't say that they're exclusive of one another, but they can coexist. Caffeine and most CNS stimulants are weak vasoconstrictors, and whereas your vasodilators, your citrulines and so on, and now that dosing is so efficacious, they're very, very powerful vasodilators, and particularly when you've got the synergism of ingredients happening in that department, the amount of the constriction of 200 to 300 milligrams of, say, caffeine has compared to 10,000 milligrams of vasodilators, it's just not really comparative. So yes, you can get that, and there's also an argument that sort of gets left out of this is the effect of actually training, that having more stimulation and being more psychologically in the zone. So you actually train harder, you lift more weight, you do more reps, which induces more pump and allows those other things to get those sort of like the veins flowing. There's an ingredient will do so much, but like as we know, nothing works unless you do. So sometimes, as much as having less of those ingredients and nowhere near clinical doses or anything like that, but that person is actually putting out more effort themselves, and they find that their pump, although on paper doesn't equate to that, there is a little bit of bro science about it, saying this will get you G'd up so that you go and work harder, as opposed to going someone 6 out of 10 stimulated psychologically are not as in the game, and they've got a full clinical dose of 1, 2, and 3. but they don't feel as much as a pump just because they're not training anywhere near as hard.
Yeah. And some of this stuff's so hard to measure, right? Like, it's kind of what you're saying. Sometimes we have to go off a little bit of bro science because we really just can't get data on it. It's about how the person feels. And they might say, oh, my pump was about a 9 out of 10. It's like, well, how do we measure that? How do we know? And it's just, it comes down to the individual, I guess. The other thing that is worth noting, I've had customers in the past, who they'll use a pre-workout that, like, when I take it, I swell up like a puffer fish. And I'm like, this is the best pump thing you're ever going to take. And they go to the gym and they try it and they come back and they say, Stu, I got no pump off it. And then I always kind of pose a few questions to them. I'm like, well, A, what did you eat today? How many carbohydrates have you had? If you've got no carbs, then you don't have, your body's not trying to then force glycogen into your muscle. So you're not going to get that blood flow to the muscle. And B, are you hydrated? If your blood volume's down, your body is never going to take blood away from your organs to stick into your muscles, right? So this is something I think a lot of people don't take into consideration. What they're doing throughout the day, what they're consuming, what they're drinking is going to have an impact on their pump.
And their stress.
Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the daily stresses, I think, is a big one too. Because I think cortisol is very powerful. Somewhat of it has a bit of a push-pull effect, but it is very much a constrictor as well in its own right. Anyone who will notice this will be if someone's done a big push-pull legs block or a big 5x5 program. They're towards the pointy end of the program where it's getting really gnarly, and they're probably on that borderline where they're almost overtraining, and you start realizing you can't get a pump to save yourself. That's a pretty good indicator of how stress can sort of take away from that too. I'm noticing it now after a good solid month out of a gym, just doing home stuff with barbells and dumbbells. I'll just take literally just a teaspoon of citrulline now and train and just go versus, in a gym where I'm taking, grind plus other plus other things. I'm taking multiple pump agents and still not going that good because every day your coffee, your workload's high, your business is there. So when you take the stresses away and take that, a lot of the stresses away, it just does its own thing a lot of the time. So yes, I'd also say hydration, food, sodium, and stress would be massive. Probably more influential than whatever you're going to consume.
Definitely.
Yep. I think
I wanted to throw something to you guys, and this might be a fun little segment we can start including in these, Will. And I don't think I've actually asked it of you before, which is strange. But I'd like to ask what your 3 favorite supplements are that are not your own supplements. And same for you. Actually, Pat, you know what? Because you don't do your own supplement brand per se, you can give me any 3 supplements that you like. But I want to know your 3 must-have supplements, or your 3 would-be must-have supplements. Did Primabolics or Primabolics not exist?
Yeah, gotcha.
I'll do the same.
You'll do the same. I'd say, look, Vitality Switch is a good one. Or greens, as far as greens go, I just like that because of the ratio to cordyceps and all that sort of stuff. So, and I like the fact that it's another, Greg's doing some other great stuff. There's a lot of vegetation. So I'd have a green supplement. That'd be the base of it. And it'd be like that, or Matty from White Wolf. I love his greens too. So either Vitality or the White Wolf greens are really good products. Probably an adrenal stuff is really important in my world. Probably I'd lean towards shameless plug to Stu. We could go that way, or either way, adrenal stuff is a category. I used to live on CourtRx, but I sort of been getting up towards the 3, 4, 5 capsules to try and make it take the edge off after a while. And then probably finally, protein wise is the other one. Greens, adrenals, and protein are my sort of basic year-round things. I'm bigger on hormones now that I'm approaching 30 this year, so a test boost is really good. And one of the original ones that I used to like, did you guys ever have BPI brand, Jay Cutler's brand, AHD, the old test booster? Did you guys have a crack?
Yeah. I used to stock it. Good brand.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I don't know what was in it. It's good though.
that was before we used to look at nutrition panels. Will, we didn't used to look at them. We just used to look at the advertising on the front.
Well, we couldn't because it didn't tell you what was in there. So it didn't matter. We didn't know. Hey, what about you, Paddy? What are your go-tos now? What are your OGs?
My in order, Vitality Switch would be definitely a first for me. To me, that's like, health and nourishment is the start of everything. You can't focus on performance if you've got 4 flat tires in your car. You need to make sure you're in a good state of health first and foremost. Next, more of a mental function would be like Mile Block Skywalk. I give it to everyone that I can who will take it in the sense of just improving your mental function, allowing you to have less stimulants throughout the day, so you're not just reliant on it, and you can just function more and get more out of your day psychologically, and more of, I guess, unlock more of your mental capacity. And third would probably be something, on the hormonal side. I think if you can get your gut health / micronutrient balance really on point, you're at a fantastic place. Get your brain to function really well, then you're in a good place as well. And something hormonally, I wouldn't say that I necessarily name drop a particular product. I think you do need to cycle your hormonal products in general. But probably good one. Another My Block's Mania, just because of the stimulus of luteinizing hormone, would probably be one that anyone could use pretty much. Would be a good go-to. But yeah, something to support your hormonal function. If you got those 3 boxes ticked, you're off to a fantastic start. And most of the other things like 1UP protein, 1UP pre-workouts, they're luxury items. I mean, you can get whatever you need, macronutrient wise from whole food anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And actually, on Skywalk, that's actually a product that Maddie Highgate gave me a free tub of to try, which I absolutely loved, and it was the inspiration for me starting to work on the development of this one, NeuroCrem. So that's a really good product actually, and I might include that in my list. But I was going to say my three go-to products that for me are a must-have, and these are probably going to be, 2 of them are relatively boring, but I always have a good quality creatine monohydrate, 200 mesh micronized, and L-glutamine. I don't care what brand at the end of the day, as long as it's that 200 mesh micronized, I'm happy. This one's probably one that people might not expect me to say, which is I like to use a good exogenous ketone product, and not for the reason that you might expect. A lot of people say that the ketones are fat burners. Now, really, the science isn't there for that. And we've also seen a lot of MLM companies pushing ketones, and they've got a bit of a bad rap over the last few years. But I use ketones because I do a bit of intermittent fasting, and I find that it is just so amazing for suppressing my appetite, for keeping that ghrelin down. Is just awesome. So I'm going to say Keto EAA. It's got a good amount, this is by JD Nutraceuticals, got a good amount of ketones in there, and got a good hit of essential amino acids. So that one's one of my must-haves. I do use a protein supplement. Now, I know that Pat said we can get our macronutrients from our food, which is totally true. But for me, I'm time poor. I'm really, really time poor. So if I can smash a couple of protein shakes a day, it saves me from trying to, eat an extra 2 or 3 chicken breasts. Yeah. So my go-to protein right now is Hydro WPI 90 by Transcend Supplements. That's one of my original brands that I stocked as well, and it's always Transcend. Always a brand that I love, and that's my go-to protein right now. But Keto EAA, Hydro WPI 90, and a good quality creatine and glutamine. That's got me. There are other things I take. Obviously, I do a green supplement, multivitamin, but if you want to know my favorites, they'd be my 3. So,
we're all nootropic fans. I like that. I like that everyone's in the nootropic space. You with the ketones, even if you went the ghrelin road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if Skywalk was like 100, 150 caffeine, I think I'd live on it. Hey, I think 200 megs per scoop. I mean, for most people, probably great, but for myself, I would use that all day long if it was 100 caff. That would be unreal. If only I could make it.
Well, Will, there's a product out that I've heard of called NeuroCrem. It's a non-stimulant. I actually, in my original formula, I had guarana in this, which I've removed and replaced with the rhodiola. So this might be right up your alley.
What's the what was it with the go? That was a good thought, because rhodiola, I've had that in high doses in formulas recently, and it's quite a beast when you actually have it at higher dosages in performance-based products. Like I've seen it at about 500 milligrams in a lot of pre-workouts, and it actually is really, really quite good data on it for things like for increasing endurance, ATP production. It's
also good for natural energy. So that's the reason I went with rhodiola, because it's got its nootropic benefits, cognition, so on and so forth. It was a perfect inclusion, but it also helps produce natural energy, but not in the stimulatory way that we're used to. So we're talking more your cellular energy, your adenosine triphosphate, this sort of thing. So for me, it was the perfect thing to, pull out that guarana and replace with, because I wanted something so that the gamers could use this and they could feel energized without having that kind of jittery feeling that you can get with some products when they're overloaded with stimulants. Now, I don't believe Skywalk is overloaded with stimulants by any means. To me, it's a really good product. Like I said, I lived on that thing for an entire tub. But I did want to make sure that I had a point of difference. I couldn't just sit there and copy the Skywalk formula. So I wanted to create something that was a little bit different, that sat in a slightly different space, which is where NeuroCreme was born. So zero stimulant, nootropic.
Yeah, no, rhodiola is a really cool herb, actually. And I like that botanicals are seeing more and more of a space in the Aussie sub industry. I think Americans too are really starting to do that. But I've got an interesting one, Pat, with you representing the American space with a lot of giant brands. Like we said, we've seen a big trend in recent times with the Aussie, shifting towards Aussie manufacturing, just because, like you pointed out to before, we didn't have this option 2 years ago. I couldn't manufacture here and make, I tried to, and I had a horrific incident where I lost 1,000 units of pre-workout because they literally couldn't even stabilize a pre-workout. It clumped hard and I lost it, a whole pallet. So now that we can manufacture to a good quality in Australia at a competitive price point, and you're seeing that it's starting to make a bit of a resurgence here, where do you see the market? Like, do you see yourself, are you sort of wheeling and pivoting towards this, or are you sort of, staying in your lane and backing a particular horse? Like, where do you see the market in another 12 months?
We're certainly seeing quite a big shift. I think the amount of people, like the amount of distributors has not only just changed, but it's shrunk quite a bit. I mean, our brand selection has trimmed. Even the product selection within those brands is absolutely trimmed quite a bit. We don't do proteins because they're just too cost prohibitive. When you factor in the space, everything is in US dollars. Your GST it's gone up. It's the same 10%, but it's 10% of 30% more than it used to be. Your freight is all calculated, in US dollars as well. And if you think the exchange rate looks crap, where do you see what you get charged in freight terms as well? It's not as favorable as you might see on current exchange rates. So it's definitely going to keep going that way. I wouldn't say it's reversing in the next 5 years realistically. So it certainly meant a strategic change we have to do. We used to do like absolute air freight. I mean, we did Blackstone Labs, never did a sea freight pretty much ever, until we moved to full containers, which took quite some time. I mean, we've air freighted hundreds of thousands of units of product. That was our speed to market. There's a new flavor, there's a new product. There was always something new. But now that turn time has gone from, it used to be a week to, 3 or 4 months. It's just not possible to do that anymore.
Yeah.
So just got to go. It's all good and well. So I'm trying to be a market leader, but you've also got to be realistic when it comes to the economics and ensuring that you're meeting sort of like customer expectations, and also our customer, who is the retail / online outlet as well.
Yeah,
I've noticed that with your manufacturers that you work with, Pat, even though you're, for those people who don't know, Matt's dealing with some US giants, the likes of Redcon One, Myoblocks, Primeval Labs, just these big mega companies. But I have noticed that they have a tendency to cater to your needs for the Australian market. I've noticed that there's been a few like special products that you've launched onto the Australian market that don't exist on the US market, a few special flavors, special formulas. How is it that you've been able to get to that point where these US giants, I guess kind of taking your opinion and running with it?
I guess it's a balance of sort of like, it's the reputation we've been fortunate enough to build over the years. Say for Redcon, for example, like Redcon's arguably, I think it's either the top 2 or the number 1 supplement company, definitely the fastest growing, like in the history of sport supplementation. But I've known Aaron for a number of years. We've done a lot of good business together. I think once you've transacted, that much cumulative money, millions and millions of dollars, you just form a relationship that's you can't really beat in other ways. So we built a lot of rapport there. So when it came to Redcon, It was really like a concept. We sat down, talked about it. I liked the idea, bought into it in a sense. Like I like the brand story, the narrative, what it meant and what it stood for and so on. I like the values of the brand. We sketched out a few things. I went through all the product formulas, just sitting around a pop-up card table in the soon-to-be Redcon One office, just with myself and the two owners now, Aaron and Eric at the BP. And we went through everything on there. I said, yep, this we can do, this we can't do. So obviously, Australia's a big market for one of the biggest markets outside of the US. Not a massive population, but people have generally got money to spend, and I think they appreciate sport supplements a lot more than maybe some other westernized countries. So yeah, we're a big customer. So we're the first, one of the very first customers for Redcon ever. And the first I think 5 and 6 figure orders. So that was a lot. I think our first order with them was maybe 80, 100 grand. And yeah, it was a big deal. And said, yeah, a lot of custom products like Redcon One, the double tap powder came out of that very, very same meeting, and that's one of the most popular SKUs now. So Total War, everyone knows today, that's Total War Australia. That's actually, there is no Total War US anymore. That is the same one, the Australian formula.
Yeah, no, I've noticed that. I was speaking to Matty Highgate about that a couple of months ago, actually, and the formula was so successful here and was such a good formula. They went, well, what's the need in making 2 different ones? Let's stick with the Aussie one.
100%. They want to create a really unique, not a compatible, for a brand experience for everyone. Where it's congruent. Where when someone tries a product and go, oh, that's not the same as this one, or that's a different one, or whatever. It's consistent. Everyone's having the same experience the whole world over, as much as reasonably possible. Sometimes that's not always the case because of certain countries' restrictions. Like you can't do agmatine in the UK, for example. It's a prohibited ingredient. But where possible, we want to keep it as in line as we possibly can. And that's something we're always conscious of when it comes to importing and distributing. We see it as we represent the brand. We're like reps, in a different territory, basically outside of the US. We're going to really make sure that we treat the brand like our own and look after its brand integrity.
Now, just to shift gears a little bit, Pat, I just want to rewind back to that uni student selling supplements out the boot of his car. In your mind at that time, did you ever see the size that the empire would become in your mind? Did you ever see, the trips around the world and I see a lot of your Instagram sitting by flashy looking pools with palm trees and Mai Tais. Was this something that you ever envisaged, or did it just kind of happen step by step?
Oh, it's definitely just happened step by step. And like, I'm very thankful that I've never lost perspective. Like, I still don't think that we're making a splash in any way, shape or form, but those moments when you're sitting there, like, sitting with like the fact that like people like, Aaron Singerman and people that I looked up to are now just sort of like, friends and colleagues and people we work with, every day. It's completely surreal. It's awesome. It's a sort of like a childhood dream. I always loved, the bodybuilding supplement scene. And unfortunately, my breathtaking genetics didn't exactly allow me to be an Olympia athlete. But to be involved and to be like, at Olympia events and things like that, but with a purpose, is definitely somewhat of a surreal experience. And having those trips with with Matty to the US and so on, and that being like part of our like job, you can call it that, is unreal. And being able to work with some really creative minds like like John, who owns on My Blocks and people like that, is very surreal and very humbling, very grateful for the experience.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. I think something that you touched on just then, which I find interesting, is you keep coming back to the point that you weren't genetically gifted for bodybuilding. But from what I see from you, obviously I don't get to see you in person that often, but from what I see via your social media and through mutual contacts we have, you're still in the gym every day, grinding it out like everyone else, regardless of the fact that you're ever going to, be standing on a bodybuilding stage at, 110 kilos. You're in there busting ass, and you are always driven. How do you keep that motivation without the genetics per se that, you see with a lot of the people in the industry that you're involved with?
I think the difference for me is I look at people, so what's your reason for training? If you're getting into to exercise in general for the outcome, you're probably never going to be satisfied. I love the process. I like that it's hard. I like that it's difficult. I like the regimentation and the discipline and the monotonous nature of it. That to me is quite satisfying. It ticks my OCD box very much. I like that it requires a lot of dedication. That there really is no end. I mean, there is no sort of like, what do you want to get to? I said, I just want to get better. I like the process. I like the values that it delivers as well, that you need to put in a lot of effort. There's a lot of delayed gratification that comes from it. And I think that, weight training in particular, which is what I'm most interested in, teaches you really anyone all of the values that they'll need to be successful, really at anything in life. I mean, if you can be great, and not great by, by societal standards, I mean, great by your own standards. Everyone can improve. Not everyone has the genetic capacity to this, particularly to be very muscular and very strong. There is genetic, limitations in that sense, but everyone can improve on what they've got. Doesn't mean you'll be able to, like, I've got as much chance of being black as I do as being as big as an Olympian. Probably not going to happen. I've been hoping that I would have a growth spurt, but it has not happened just yet. I'm hoping to get taller.
I thought you were going to say you were hoping that you might turn black.
I was hoping I would get taller and darker, but neither of those. My fair Scottish genetics have not served me in either of those ways. So I think I'm stuck in the sub 6 foot department. But we can all improve on what we've got. So I think if everyone's focused on enjoying, embracing the process, not just focus on the outcome, you'll enjoy it a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Will? Do you have any kind of questions that you've been sort of conjuring up there while I've stolen all Pat's attention?
Yes, Look, I thought I'd let you guys, because it's valuable. I think that notion around the why do we train? I think our ideas are similar, and most people who have stuck around for the long term and have worked through injuries, worked around horrific work schedules, around families, kids. Most of us have, if you've been in it this long, like most of us are probably a decade plus in the game. You're right, it becomes such a huge part just of the routine and of your normality. I've learned that in isolation recently, that not be able to train at full capacity for a month or so, and it completely changes your everything, particularly biochem, really behind that as well. Like, everything in your body it's amazing when you look at. We're doing a lot of reading into things that are in longevity space, and it seems to be the one common thing that promotes longevity in all factors happen to be resistance training. Some form of exercise seems to be the main thing, and I don't do it to be healthy per se. I don't think anyone who got the competitive bodybuilding ever was wanted to be healthy. It's not really bodybuilding and health isn't really hand in hand. Now as I get older, I care more about it, and it's now gone completely that way. But so I think, but what I really lack insight into, and I think Pat, you can bring a unique perspective. While Stu and I have, we've obviously frequented gyms, we're wholesalers, we're retailers, we've done Suppz to death. But what the gym space is something that's a complete enigma to me, as one, a business model, and two, just what that looks like in to run one, because we all have that childhood dream, I think, of owning one. Like we all would love a gym. That's, I mean, Pat, you've got a pretty badass dungeon built into your store, but the scale of what I've seen this week on your socials, Pat, I had no idea you basically had a medieval foundry, which happened to have some barbells. So it's been you're pretty busy, man. Like what goes into operating that day to day? Like how many staff, how many tons of steel do you have on the ground in weights? Like what's the logistics behind it? Running a commercial gym the size you've got basically a Doherty's floating around. What's this? What goes into that?
I don't think anything's hard if you really enjoy it. If you got the passion for it and you enjoy it, it's just something that you do. Like I'm sure that for once you've got the awareness and you sort of grow your knowledge in that area, everything becomes easy. I'm sure if most people who say take a supplement think of the process, because they just have very new to that of manufacturing and formulating and label design, all of the factors that go into making an actual product, it would be completely overwhelming. And likewise for gym, if you go to a gym, you think, how could I ever, own and operate and run a gym? It's just a process like anything else. It is something you really enjoy, but to me, a gym is not a business; it's a community. It's a club, it's a gym, it's not a business. That's the way we've always thought of it. And I think that's why every single person that comes to Spartans doesn't feel like a member. They don't feel like they're a dollar figure. They're a person, they're a human first. It's a place for people to come together and share a common interest and so on. Like I said, it's an outlet. For a lot of people, this is their second home. Or for a lot of people, it's like, for me, it's been my first home at times, literally my first home. I've slept here more nights during renovations and times like that. And it's been a place we've all been able to come together. So that's probably the part of the restrictions that sort of like it crushes me the most. But definitely in that sense, it's been given a really good appreciation for what this place means, and I could never imagine life without it. It's far more than a business. I couldn't give a shit about the money, but absolutely not remotely interested. We spent far more than we ever should on this place. If it was just a business, we wouldn't have spent anywhere near that. We wouldn't be spending, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars painting the place and doing. We've got that much new equipment in manufacturing and all these new things going on. Why are we doing it? Because we love it. We want to give people an amazing place to come home to when this is all over.
Can you build one in Newcastle? That's my next question.
Yeah. It's something we get asked quite a lot, is to do more gyms, but no, it's like it's not just the walls and the machines, and it's all of the care and all the attention and all of the time and effort and the people. The people is what makes a place. It's it's all the little details that no one really sees. That's the stuff. I mean, you can go to if you've been to not to pick on anyone, just a standardized model of like an Anytime Fitness. To me, that feels like that's nothing wrong with that model. It suits a certain type of member. If you're new to training, you want a non-offensive, very plain Jane sort of experience. Fantastic. But I'm sure for all of us who are more like, been around gyms for a long time, it feels like training in a hospital waiting room. I mean, it's very cold, it's very clinical, there's no warmth, there's no connection about it. There's no real reason.
Well,
it's the same. It's not so much the bars are bar, within reason, but not to us.
I'm searching for when I'm looking for a gym, I'm searching for what I call character. I'm searching for a gym where I walk into it and I look around at the machines and I literally think to myself, how much muscle has been built on that machine? How much blood, sweat, and tears has been put into that machine? How many people have been in here and changed their lives? How many depressed people have walked into this gym and came out a happy person? And that's kind of what I love when I go into a gym. And when you walk into a gym like that, it doesn't smell like fresh Dettol. It's clean. It's clinical. It's, that's not what we're looking for. I walk into a gym and I want it to smell like an old skating rink. I want to see the marks on the chin-up bar where, one of the members puts his tape, because that's his exact arm width for his chin-ups. And, these are all the little touches that for me make it special. And we've got a few gyms like that around here. But you don't find it in the big commercial gyms. So I'm definitely going to have to come down for a session in Spartan's gym very soon.
Of course, man. All the stories, it's all little details. The holes in the walls where a piece of equipment bumped into it, rolling down a ramp, and the little things like that. All little challenges. That's the little things that make the difference, and so on. So we've got some. We actually sold, which was actually very oddly enough, like the equipment to me is like, it's not just, it's just lumps of steel or anything like that. It's got a lot of character. It's the memories and the people and all those sort of things. And some of the pieces we had that sold today would be well over 20, 25 years old and in absolutely pristine condition. Not a single scratch, silky smooth. And as good as the day they rolled off the production line, because they've been well cared for and they've served a lot of people really, really, really well. They mightn't be new, but the biomechanics of that particular shoulder press is fantastic. Yeah. And you can't buy that experience. You can't buy that that anymore. It literally does not. It's not possible to do. So,
you've been down here. You've been down here to my shop, Will, and I took you through Pump City Gym. Yeah. Did I not? Yeah. So you've seen some of you. I know exactly where you're coming from, Pat. Well, I've got a lot of Series 1 Nautilus equipment here. I've got some 1970s Nautilus equipment that are literally chain and cog driven. I've got a tricep extension, a bicep curl machine. I've got an old Nautilus pullover, and that stuff to me is priceless. And to me, the feel that I get on that, yeah, all right, it's not designed as ergonomically as a brand new Life Fitness machine, but for me, that's how I feel it in my muscles. They're the ones that I love, and they've just got so much character, there's so much kind of history and story behind them. I really, really love a good old school gritty gym.
Yeah, and you do search for them. Hey, you sort of go on a pilgrimage for the most gritty dungeon gym when you get into this after a while, and you really seek them out. Those sort of really unique places. One of my favorite travels, I do a lot of the regional accounts, because it's not, when I started the business, it wasn't necessarily economically viable for me to have a sales rep or have anyone to help. So I did a lot of that myself. And even when I do have sales reps now, it's not, again, commercially sensible to send them 500 k's west to go, for one store. So I do those myself, and I've made really good friendships in these. And I found some old dungeons out west in places that, like you guys said, aren't commercially sensible by any accounts, but have got machines. And there's one that I love out at Orange, One Strength. And they've got they built.
My mate owns that one.
Oh, do you know Lyle and
yeah, Lyle used to live a block up from me. He trained down at Aventus with me for years.
No way. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Lyle, I used to train with Lyle for years, mate.
Wow, dude, Lyle's a legend, man. We'll bleep that out. Yeah, he's a funny dude though. What they've got there, bought an old squash court, and we've got dumbbells that are literally 40 years old, old steel, and you see every dent in them, you think, how many millions of side raises, and you just can't. There's something that you can't beat when you look at a chin-up bar that's literally been worn in, and you're like, imagine how many hundreds of thousands of hours it takes for human hands to wear shape into steel. It's awesome to think.
Yeah.
That place is a relic for it, and it is a passion project. And I think you're right, Pat. A lot of our businesses are, like, retail is very much. I had a brief stint in it recently, and it's and you do too, Pat. And it's a very, like you said, it's not just a commercial operation or just a business. You've got to make that thing an absolute baby of yours, otherwise it will never be. Particularly in this climate,
retail's a beast, mate. Retail is an absolute beast, but I love it. I'm still here doing it.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's good. We love. That's why I stick stubbornly to brick and mortar. It's that passion. You get to work around that every day, and you keep yourself pretty passionate in the same. I think it rubs off on you. When you ring someone who's just utterly mad, with how keen they are about everything. It doesn't even matter if it's commercially viable. They don't know what GP means or margins are or logistics or freight. They just love Suppz. They love to get in the new cracking the tub, having a go. It's cool. Like, that stuff is infectious. Like, you can't beat that. No, and it's something that's sort of, I think, hopefully consumers will continue to realise the value in that. And continue to as much as they have in the last few decades. So. Yeah.
Speaking of new and exciting supplements, maybe we should wrap up the show with a little bit of a chat about what's new that's coming. I'm sure that you guys both have something new that you can give us some sort of an info drop that no one's got yet on what's up and coming and what's new. I've already given mine. Neurocram. Neurocram. It's new. It's out there, guys. Get onto it. But Pat, is there anything new and exciting coming that we should be looking out for?
Sure. Things that are probably very new that are more on the shorter term sort of side of things. My blocks do a lot of limited releases, and I think that really harnesses a lot of that for John, our Kid Skywalker. It's harnessing his creative passion. He loves the creation process, like both the formula. He does his own flavor systems, everything from concept to the finished product. He is the man who makes everything. So they have a new limited edition coming out with Loco, which is actually going to be a higher stimulant, a big single serve scoop type product. Not just more stimulants, but sort of like a more. Loco's always been more of a moderate type product. It's only 200 megs of caffeine. It's real caff, which is their own strand of caffeine, which is a real more slower release sort of format. And this is more of a bit harder and heavier one. Some people do one, some people do two of the current. This is more of a true one scoop type product. So that'll be something quite different. There's also a new formula for Contra, their anti-estrogen product as well, which I'm sure everyone will be. I'm very particular about not sharing ingredients and details because John is very, very anal retentive and particular about it. And
also,
if
you're
knew that I
talking
was
to
sharing things,
manufacture supplements, and I for one have an anti-estrogen product, and I know that Will's got some anti-estrogen components to some of his products as well. So maybe we're not the guys to share it with.
Yeah.
Excited to see, around. Like, I'm looking forward to that because I think the estrogen space has such positive implications for both men and women, particularly men now. I think anyone from an overweight background, anyone with just the environmental burden now, the amount of chemicals, pollutants, toxins floating around, just generally creeping body fat, alcohol, so many things are estrogenic in men, and it's not something that gets talked about. But, you know, as an endomorphic body type, I've always struggled with being estrogen dominant. It's a real killer. It makes it so hard to change body composition or maintain any sort of body comp. It's a real prick. Like, it is really, really hard to get around. And seeing the market respond to that, just like when the adrenal space finally got some education, it's responded. Now, estrogen, I think, will be the big focus. And it started with, obviously, you know, pioneered by women, but now it's starting to, I think it'll get some a look in for the male side as well, I think. You know, products like Contra I've used, it's a pretty harsh amount of the AI in that one, but for some, but it's it does the job, and like that's why I love hormonal products. It's they're field products. They get a great benefit, bang for your buck is massive, and I think that's what gets people hooked on them. You know, when you first, I remember trying the PES Erase Pro back in the day. It was the very first. I just said harden it on the tub, a prop blend with like 3 ingredients. One was a ribostate, it turned out later on. And yeah, you know, you just wonder, you don't know why, but all of a sudden you do. You just feel harder, you drop heaps of fluid, and you feel fantastic, a bit edgy at the gym, and that sort of stuff you remember. You know, you remember for a long time. Yeah. It's one of those nice feel good stories. You know? What
do you got coming for us new though? Well, without without being too forceful, do you have any insight for us into what Primabolics is working on at the moment? Any insight at all? You don't have to drop too much information. You can be a little bit cryptic if you want.
Oh no, I've got two, but the one that I can disclose properly is finally, because I finally got it right. I've been beta testing this. I put it out as adrenal Supp back in Feb, and I was stoked with it, but I had an idea, and at the time I couldn't source it. So I basically got the ingredient that I was looking for, and that was passion flower. And I finally got a good source of that raw. So I've put.
I use passion flower in my product.
Oh, it's awesome, man! It's so good. Like naturally occurring GABA, phenomenal. Because GABA is actually really not bioavailable that much by itself. It's sort of like tribulus with testosterone. Like the perceived effects are great. You feel like, but the actual bioavailability, if you look at actual neural GABA levels, aren't actually that fantastic with synthetic GABA subs. But if you use naturally occurring with the cofactors and phytos that go with it, it's awesome. So passion flower, I added to that. I threw in a ZMA stuff instead of straight zinc. So I basically just took my old supplement, took it back to the drawing board, tweaked a few things, and it's now a bit of a weapon. It fits now. I had to sort of tweak some things in the back end to make it fit into capsules, because that's a whole new space. But that's literally going to be here probably end of next week. So yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, I look forward to trying it, mate. I'm very excited. It should be interesting. You know, I love my adrenal products, so I'll give that one a crack. And if it hits Stewie's tick of approval, we'll get it all stocked up, mate.
We'll do a swap. I'll try yours. You're Nootropic, because
we'll do a swapsies.
Isn't it funny? We all love adrenals, and we all love our nootropics.
Nootropics.
It's a pretty common theme, but
yeah.
Well, we've covered a good amount of content, I think, tonight, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. Might wrap it up there and say thanks, Pat, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and getting some insight into the mind of a supplement entrepreneur. And as always, Will, it's always a pleasure having a chat. You know, we always enjoy ourselves when we get together. So thanks for coming, guys, and we'll call it a night.
Beautiful.
Thank you, gents. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having us.
See you, Pat.